I'm back again with another quite typical topic, but I thought I'd give my 2 cents on it. If I could go back, this is what I would do differently. I always caught myself in tutorial hell, which is something you might always hear, and I didn't understand how to get out of it. I also caught myself trying to keep up with the trends. So yeah, for a bit of context, I started my career in 2021, and at the time, React was definitely kind of settling in as like the go-to framework for web development. There were still some others floating around, but at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, whether if it was, front end, back end, web, if even that was for me, mobile. And that's actually something I regret not figuring out early on in my career. So one point I would definitely push is to stop jumping between tutorials and stop jumping between tools, technologies, and frameworks. So in my opinion, I think you should find something that you enjoy, find something that you're good at, and stick to it and be a specialist. So, for example, with the context of web development, if you're good at writing Java and knowing how to make a Java service and working with Spring Boot, stick to it. That's what you're good at. That's what you enjoy. Get really good at that. And your skills will be way more valuable than where I was when I first started, which was knowing a bit of the Java syntax and then knowing React, but having never actually studied JavaScript. So knowing a framework before learning the actual fundamentals of the language and what's actually going on. And then dabbling with some mobile development and Swift and Java, not even Kotlin, Android development, and then trying to learn some DevOps at the same time. It's all over the place. And they always say, like, jack of all trades, master of none. Sure, but I wasn't even learning those things to actually find out what it is I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be good at all of those things, and that was the wrong mindset. I think it's okay to learn all these different things, but I think once you find, and once you do something, kind of sit back and reflect, and it's okay to actually like write it down. Like, did I enjoy that? Did I like working with this technology? What do I like about it? What don't I like about it? Not only will this make you like a better engineer in general, and actually know like the different things between different tools, technologies, and languages, but you will actually know if it's something you want to do. And this kind of process of like reflecting is something you can also apply for every aspect of your life. But specifically in this context, I think it's really useful to kind of understand that. So yeah, that's something definitely in my opinion, you should kind of find out what it is you want to do, not just because of the memes or like the status. There are some people, there's like a bit of like, in the tech industry, or back end engineers are smarter than front end engineers, or front end engineers aren't real engineers, and bro, forget all that. That shit does not matter. Look into what's in demand. Look at the job market. Scroll through the LinkedIn job boards. What are you seeing more of? And maybe that can kind of bias one of the tool technologies that you are stuck between pursuing. And yeah, I think that's kind of summarized that point. That just stop jumping around, and that will help you contribute towards getting out tutorial hell. What tutorial hell is, if you don't know, is just not being able to write any code without following a tutorial. I think the biggest thing you might hear in a lot of other videos I talk about that is gonna really, really take you out of tutorial hell is building projects. I should have been building projects way earlier. I should have been building projects during university. I built my first project, my first real project 3 years after being a software engineer in the industry. It was, in my opinion, the biggest mistake I ever made. I learned more in making that one project than I did in a good 1 year of full-time development in a 9 to 5 corporate tech company, which sounds crazy. It does sound crazy, but it's true. You learn so much from building projects, and it's, in my opinion, way more fun. So build projects as early as possible. And honestly, with the way we have AI, I'm not saying use AI to bait the projects, but you have like a personal tutor. Prompt the AI, give it the context. I'm a junior developer. I'm wanting to learn how to code. don't give me any real code snippets, but kind of give me a roadmap how to learn. I want to build a project. Give me some, you know, give me like a guide, explain everything completely from scratch. And that's not only going to give you the patience to actually read, it's going to give you the same skills of reading that guide. It's going to be the same skills you're going to be using to, you know, when you're reading documentation and learning how a framework works, for example, and having the patience to do that. Because I remember when I first started, I'm skipping over docs. I would rather spend 2 hours looking through Stack Overflow and Reddit forums than actually just sit down and read the docs, which is so dumb. But again, it's having that kind of TikTok brain and being too lazy. And then don't be afraid to ask questions. It's a very typical kind of point in anything that you want to learn. But I remember being too scared to ask questions because I didn't want to look like I was dumb. But I think it's okay because that's you're learning. Like I think one of the worst things is, for example, let's say you're teaching someone something and you ask them, "Oh, do you understand?" They go, "Yeah," but they actually don't. They just don't want to seem like they don't know, and that kind of comes from that imposter syndrome or lack of confidence, and you're actually doing yourself a disservice by doing that, in my opinion. Ask questions. It's only going to be a short period of time when you're going to be quote unquote looking dumb, because you've asked questions, you've got to answer, you now know it. It's only going to be a matter of time since you no longer have those questions and you have all your questions answered because you know your stuff. And in my opinion, I think it's the best thing to do. And what better time than in your first year of coding or in your early days of coding? You can ask as many dumb questions or silly questions, and it shows that you're on it. You're proactive and you're asking the right type of questions. And then lastly, don't obsess over the trends. Everyone and their cousin is shouting about this next thing. This is going to take over, or this is going to take over. Just block out the noise. In my opinion, I think you should even spend time away from like the tech space online and just focus on the fundamentals, build projects, and you can slowly get some insights, maybe like a small little newsletter. But if you're following trends and things that get clicks, it's gonna really mess with your head. So just to re-emphasize, I think the most important point out of everything I mentioned is building those real projects. Definitely work on those. And then I think that's bottom line, that one of the most important things. A lot of projects that people start out when they're learning development, for example, with web dev, is making a to-do list, and that's great, especially when you're first starting out. But then start to think outside the box. What have you learned from that to-do list? You've learned how to make this input component. What other type of project could you use that? And now that you know how to build this button and save this state, you can apply those same learnings in a different project that you don't actually that you could actually get real users using, and actually be a usable project. And having that in mind when you're making your projects. Okay, cool. What happens if 10,000 people are making these requests to my web app? What's actually going to happen? Is it going to break? Can it handle these type of requests? And so having these type of thinking that like that can really help you really speed up your skills in being a developer. So hopefully that was useful. That's what the things that I would do differently in my first year of coding. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next one.